All right, greetings from Las Vegas. You know what? Life is good. Football is back. Fall is right around the corner, and Jack even showered today. We're going to have a good show. Beat the Odds starts right now.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
Here we go. Welcome inside our Las Vegas studio. I'm Dave Hall, and our Greek goddess, Mariah Janos, is back. Great to have you back.
So much. Yeah, they dragged me off a beach in Greece to hang out with you guys. Awesome.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm super pumped to be back because today is our pro football preview show.
It is. So who's going to be the champs? Who will be the chumps? Let's get right to it. Coming up on today's show, Jack and Teddy will talk about the best ways to bet these early season games, plus their picks to play in the title game.
And I'll be chatting with our friends from the Westgate as Las Vegas sportsbooks prepare for the football season. And the guys from Sports Grid are joining the party too. They're talking about MVPs and big game teams.
All right, thanks, Mariah. And yeah, showered. Good job.
Showered, no deodorant. We're going to call it a push.
Now, this is how excited Jack was for the show. We have a Zoom call every Monday at noon to talk about what's on the show.
Yeah.
18 hours later, you were still on the call.
Well, nobody ever said we're done, and I kept expecting you to turn your camera on at some point. We never get to see you in person, but I'll tell you, if you're ever going to turn it on, if we're ever going to have an 18-hour Zoom call, this is the week. Because we're in football season, we've survived, and now we've got not only preseason wrapping up, of course, college football starting up this weekend, but we are on the cusp of what's everybody's favorite time of year.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, Teddy, tons of changes like every offseason. So betting these early games can be a little more challenging, or?
I'm still taking the under on Jack's shower. But, I mean, we talk about simple September strategies that work. And in my mind, this is the simplest strategy there is. Bet on good teams, bet against bad teams. The markets recognize these teams are better than the other teams, but the reality is that for September football, if you're betting on the good teams, betting against the bad teams, you're likely to make money. Now, the value will eventually swing. The markets will eventually adjust. But this is not all that different from any other type of investment. When it comes to conceptually, you want to buy low and sell high. So in September, I want to bet on good teams and bet against bad ones.
I'm going to write this down. We should be betting on the good teams that are going to cover and not betting on the ones that aren't. I will tell you, I also think it's a good time to reset as far as what makes professional football a little different than a lot of other things that we bet on. And one of those things is home field advantage. There's a lot of parity in the league. Last year we started out, underdogs were outperforming favorites by a lot. I mean, games and games and games. So it's a good time to kind of recalibrate and remind yourself that if you're an average player and you like to bet favorites, you like to bet overs, you like to bet home teams, that will generally speaking get you in trouble early in the year in football. Teddy's exactly right, though. Let's find the good teams, understand there's a lot of parity, and then hope that they start out as hot as they should. Although with Kansas City last year, we didn't get that, right?
True enough. Teddy, what about some of the teams that have new quarterbacks, like, say, a Pittsburgh? Like, how do you approach teams like that where you don't really know what you're going to get?
So for a lot of teams, you don't know exactly what you're going to get. So we're not going to focus on those teams.
All right.
Or early on, you want to focus on the teams. We know this team's good. We know this team's bad. Let's take advantage. The markets will catch up. They catch up fairly quickly, just like we expect with the kickoff rules. We expect the markets to catch up fairly quickly. Though initially, those new kickoff rules are likely to create some opportunities because how quick a bettor is going to adjust, how quick are the market's going to adjust. Clearly, we've seen an impact in the preseason. Preseason scoring has been way down.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you do things early to build momentum, and some of the most important information we're giving is about not overreacting. Don't be Kenny Rogers week 1 and week 2. Be okay if there's a lot of changes with the team that you like. It doesn't mean you have to bet on them. Let's wait and see how things unravel.
Kenny Rogers?
The gambler.
Oh, okay. Wow, nice reference, Grandpa.
That's exactly right.
We'll get back to you guys. So, since we dragged poor Mariah off the beaches of Greece, we had to put her to work. So here she is with our friends at the Superbook Westgate Las Vegas.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with EVP of Superbook Operations, Jay Kornegay. Jay, we are at the tail end of preseason here. Do people bet preseason? What kind of action are you seeing?
We get a little bit, but it's mostly a sharp type of player that bets preseason. The recreational players tends to stay away from it, but sharps like to get the information, try to figure out how long the starters will be out there, how long the second stringers will be out there. They use that information to play these preseason games.
Now, futures odds have been posted for quite some time now, but as we near week 1, what kind of tickets are you writing?
The futures are always getting a lot of attention from the bettors, both sharp and recreational. Those tier 1 teams, tier 2 teams always get a lot of tickets. But we've seen a couple of teams, Cleveland, Houston, Atlanta, some of the teams that you probably wouldn't have on your list, they're getting their share of support as well.
And how much of an impact does preseason play have on week 1 lines, if any?
You know, the play that we see during preseason doesn't really have an effect on week 1 too much. Every once in a while you get some player that might make an impact. Maybe a rookie quarterback is flashing that he might be more comfortable in the pro set than many anticipated. So you'll get some of those moves based off some of the preseason action that we've seen, but not too much.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Dave, we'll send it back to you in studio.
All right, thanks you two. Still to come, everybody loves a sleeper pick, right? Teams getting no love. Well, Teddy and Jack have 2. They like to maybe surprise some people this year.
Before we head to break, in 2003, which wide receiver broke the league record for most receiving yards through their first 5 seasons? The answer coming up next.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas and powered by Sports Grid.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you in 2003 which wide receiver broke the league record for most receiving yards through their first 5 seasons. The answer, St. Louis great Torrey Holt, who recorded 6,784 receiving yards through his first 5 years in the league. Minnesota's Justin Jefferson is well within striking distance, though. He needs just 885 yards in 2024 to surpass Holt's mark.
All right, thanks, Mariah. Welcome back to our home, Las Vegas. And if you look really close, I think you can see Teddy's house. It's right by Mike Tyson's house and the Tigers. Well, scan that QR code on your screen. It's our website, beattheoddstv.com. Do I have that right, Teddy?
Location wrong. And also, no Tigers, just cats.
Oh, bummer.
Don't want to see him out there swimming for sure.
All right, so we know people love to bet on sleeper teams. Teams getting no love. Well, you guys found a couple that maybe people are sleeping on this year.
I did, yeah. This is the time of year everybody's a big fan, right? I mean, everybody's 0-0, and there's lots of optimism. I think there's some things we can count on maybe this year that we've been able to count on in the past, but they've upgraded who they are, which may help our win totals. Pittsburgh, 8.5 is their win total this year. It's a team that won 10 games last year alone. And think about this, guys. This is the first team in NFL history to lose 2 games to teams that were 8 games under 500. So They lost to Arizona and New England, both 4-13. So this is a team that, with Mike Tomlin as their head coach, they always outperform the market. They're always really good against the number. And I think with improved play at quarterback, we can expect them to go back over the 8.5. Give me over with Pittsburgh.
Isn't that a big if, though?
No, they're going to get better.
The quarterback play?
No, they were starting guys in the stands last year. I mean, they had that kid from OSU. They were pulling out. He's serving hot dogs. And now they got him running the option. This year they're going to get at least better play.
All right, we'll see. Do love Tomlin, though. All right, Teddy, who's your sleeper pick this year?
Sounds a little bit suspect on Pittsburgh. Let's see if you're suspect on Arizona. I think Arizona's potential to be real good this year. Certainly better than they were last year. Jack, you just mentioned they were 4-13 a year ago. The reports from Kyler Murray was that he spent the offseason, quote, living at the training facility. This is a hungry team. It's not like Arizona's been awful forever. They have arguably the best quarterback in the division. We'll see what Stafford's health looks like. And they're facing a last place schedule from a year ago. So lots of winnable games for a team that I think has a lot of upside. There's variance on their total. You can find 6.5, 7, 7.5. Let's call it over 7 for Arizona right now. A team I can think can win 8 games or more.
Yeah, I would say that he's also living at the place if I was in charge of Arizona. Also, after last year's video games coming out and him wanting to play a lot of games. But you're right, they're going to be a lot better at quarterback and should be better overall. I remember him in Oklahoma. This guy's a gamer.
Yeah, and weapons too. Harrison Jr. joining the team as a rookie. He's a stud. So
sure,
good
a lot of
information.
potential. And again, they don't even have to be good. They just have to be pretty good, mediocre. They win 8 games. We cash our bet.
Boom, there it is. All right, thanks, guys. Now we want to check in with our friends from Sports Grid.
Kevin Walsh of Sports Grid, joined by Joe Lisi with the pro football season right around the corner. Let's eye up this MVP award. The favorite, no surprise, it is Patrick Mahomes. Though last year this award went to a different AFC quarterback. That is Lamar Jackson, who's outside of the top 5 odds for MVP. Inside that top 5, it's Green Bay quarterback Jordan Love, who I know, Joe, you believe could have a great season.
Absolutely. You look at last year's performance in terms of the last 10 games of the regular season. They won 7 of the last 10. During that time, Jordan Love progressed 270 passing yards per game, 21 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. He developed with the young wide receiver talent of Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs and knocked off some of the best teams in the AFC and NFC respectively. Detroit on Thanksgiving, Kansas City and Pat Mahomes by 8 points, and Dak Prescott and Dallas in terms of the playoff route in Big D. That's what Jordan Love brings, and at 13-1, he has great value for Green Bay this year.
It's so interesting. The only hesitation I would have, and look, value's in the eye of the beholder. I was a little surprised to see him inside that top 5. And Lamar Jackson, who won the award, not inside that top 5. Another guy who I thought might be a little bit higher, Joe, is Tua Tagovailoa with Miami. And I know there were points during last season where Tyreek Hill maybe was getting a little bit more credit, the superstar wide receiver. But there were also portions during the year where Tua was favored to win league MVP. And we know a lot of this award can come down to record and who has the best spot overall in the league, right? Or at least within their respective conference. But I'm a little surprised to see Tua sitting at 20-1 compared to maybe a 15-16-1 type of price.
I think it's how he tailed off at the end of the regular season. They look like the best team in terms of the AFC East in regards to that regular season loss in Miami to Josh Allen and Buffalo. That really maybe curtailed his performance and his odds heading into 2024. Another name to keep an eye out on is Matt Stafford in L.A. 30-1 type of number, 10-7 last year, lost to Detroit 24-23 in the playoff game, but he did throw for 24 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and that young wide receiver talent, Matt Stafford, has great value at 30-1.
Has a top 3 season MVP finish under his belt in L.A. Certainly time will tell. Joe Lisi, Kevin Walsh, we send it back to the crew out there in Vegas.
All right, thanks, fellas. So the boys just talked about teams not getting enough love. They also have teams maybe getting too much love. See which 2 teams they're fading this season.
Before we take another timeout, which player holds the all-time record for rushing yards by a quarterback? The answer after the break.
You're watching Beat the Odds, sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you which player holds the all-time record for rushing yards by a quarterback. The answer, Michael Vick, who finished his career with 6,109 rushing yards. Baltimore's Lamar Jackson could break that record this season, though still needing 851 rushing yards to catch Vick. All right, preseason has created a buzz around this year's rookie quarterback class. Of course, it all starts with the #1 overall pick, Caleb Williams. And from what we've seen so far, it seems that Chicago has finally found their guy. Williams is set up for success right out of the gate with a receiving core beyond capable of beating man coverage. And in situations where the pressure was closing in, we saw Williams scramble and make the play. Now, the 2nd overall pick, Jaden Daniels, has a lot of college experience under his belt between Arizona State and LSU, which has resulted in a quiet confidence in the pocket. Over in Denver, Bo Nix has been displaying his efficiency, but when the regular season starts, his success will be drastically impacted by the personnel around him. In a similar situation out in New England, Drake May has to make lemonade out of some very questionable lemons. May has showed solid pocket mobility and good decision-making, but he doesn't have a single true weapon in his arsenal. Down in Hotlanta, Michael Penix Jr. isn't in an ideal situation to get his career rolling quick since Atlanta signed Kirk Cousins to a $100 $180 million deal. Whether these rookies crushed preseason or barely survived, something to keep in mind is that there will be a learning curve once they go up against actual starters. So be sure to keep your eyes locked in on those Offensive Rookie of the Year odds.
Mariah, thank you. Bo Nix worth a flyer there, plus 1,100.
I don't know. Chicago's really good. By the way, Mariah needs sunscreen. She had too much fun in Greece. Chicago was good through three quarters. They outgained all of their opponents by over 430 yards through three quarters. And if the game ended then, through three quarters, they would have done a lot better. I think Caleb Williams probably is going to help them.
All right.
Bo Nix, no.
No? Okay. No. As always, Teddy, right to the point. Let's get to a topic that Jack's wife is very familiar with.
Underachieving.
Disappointment. Or that. You guys have some teams that could disappoint this season.
You're not wrong. That's exactly in my wheelhouse, is making excuses for bad things happening. And I think Cleveland is going to do that again this year. It all boils down, like it is at my house, with what I am able to do or not do with how Deshaun Watson plays. This guy, and believe me, I don't, if you're a Cleveland fan, you might want to tune away for half a second here. Lots of incompletions, lots of unforced errors. This dude, besides what goes on off the field, is overrated as a quarterback. I think Cleveland, although had a really good year last year, their schedule will be tougher, and I project them to really regress back toward the middle, which we see a lot of teams do, especially when they don't get great quarterback play. Watson, 60% of his red zone passes were inaccurate passes. It's like when I dropped back in the parking lot during our special over the special last year. I'm throwing with the wrong guy. I couldn't hit Mariah between the hands. That's what Deshaun Watson does a lot of times in the red zone, and actually overall inaccurate passes. 43% of his incompletions are based on him not throwing it to the right place. He's overrated because of that. I like under the 8.5.
Yeah, you still owe somebody for that broken window. Teddy, how about you? You got a team that could disappoint this year?
Sure, let's talk about Minnesota. And let's be real about this. Low-hanging fruit. We knew this squad wasn't going to be all that good, and now they just lost their projected. Don't know if you're going to be the starter or not, but at some point this season, one would have thought that J.J. McCarthy would have gotten a chance, the number one draft pick. He's out for the year. That leaves Sam Darnold, who has disappointed repeatedly in his career as their QB moving forward. So a team that had hope for the future, now it's all about rebuilding. Now it's all about building for next year. And with a lame duck quarterback that isn't very good, and a division that's really tough. Jack, you talked about Chicago. Green Bay's good. Detroit's good. We'll talk about those two teams as the show progresses as well. But frankly, it's a rebuilding year for Minnesota. I expect them to play like that on the field.
Hard to walk up to the window and go over with Sam Darnold on anything. So, yeah, I think you're right.
All right, fellas, thank you. Now we want to send it back to Kevin and the guys with Sports Grid.
Kevin Walsh of Sports Grid here, joined by Joe Lisi as we get set for another season of pro football action with a team going for a three-peat. Kansas City, back-to-back winners, Joe. They're the favorites to do it for what would be an unbelievable third straight time. What do you think the chances of Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce pulling that off are?
Oh, very good. And that's why they're the front runners right now, Kev, on the Westgate in regards to the Super Bowl odds and the AFC Championship. All they do is reload and they win. We saw that offense rebuild in regards to the rushing attack with Isaiah Pacheco. Now you add Marquise Brown, even though he's hurt, and now Xavier Worthy, the draft pick out of Texas. Pat Mahomes does have weapons now outside of Travis Kelce. The odds are great. They're still the best team in the AFC West, and more importantly, the best team on paper right now heading into the season.
And then perhaps the way to find value, Joe, is to look to the other conference there. And a team that Kansas City met during this run was Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, the head coach quarterback combination, have been in the news throughout the offseason. But if they can get this thing right, there's a lot of talent in Philly.
Absolutely. They were 10-1 last year, a complete football team from start to finish in terms of offensively and defensively. And then over the last 7 games of the regular season, they fell apart in the front seven. But you get Jalen Hurts, you have A.J. Brown, and more importantly, Devontae Smith in terms of the wide receiver talent. You now add a dynamic playmaker and former New York Giant running back Saquon Barkley that can catch the football out of the backfield. I think this team is legit, and let's not forget Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, and now Vic Fangio leading the defense. The sky's the limit for Philly this year.
If we go a little further down the board, Joe, out west, a championship winning duo in Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. What do you think about their chances? They surprised people last year by making the playoffs. Can they do a little more?
I think they can. They're 14-1 to win the NFC Championship, and you have a triggerman in Matt Stafford that threw for over 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, the addition of Blake Corum. But more importantly, Kev, what they did on the defensive side of the ball, that's the biggest change. I think they're going to be a contender this year.
I think they need a little bit more out of Cooper Kupp this season, but the Puka Nacua breakout obviously helped a ton. Joe Lisi, Kevin Walsh, Sports Grid, getting you ready for another season of pro football action.
Look forward to it, guys. Thanks. Up next, which teams will be the last one standing in February? Teddy and Jack have their title game picks next. All right, welcome back to Beat the Odds. Mariah just threatened to say something really mean, so we'll get to that in a second. It is time for Best Bets, and you know what, Mariah? Bad news for you. No New England in there.
No, well, bad news for you. No Kansas City either.
Okay.
So who is playing for the trophy? Teddy, take it away.
So I'm going to talk about two teams from New England's division that could be there in the AFC. That'd be New York and Miami. And honestly, I think New York is probably the better of the two. When we look at their personnel, if they stay healthy, I think they're very live in the AFC. In the NFC, I'm also going to take a divisional matchup. Detroit versus Green Bay in the NFC Championship game. And I look for Detroit to get past Green Bay in that contest. So two fan bases that have been tortured, New York and Detroit. Let's root for some love for those two franchises this year. I think they'll meet in the big game.
By the way, we should get real about this. I mean, we want, if we're right, to be able to look up at the end of the year and spring our arm, patting ourselves on the back, because it's easy to pick Kansas City or San Francisco, those type teams.
Well, but you do that anyway, Jack.
You're right. If I get anything right, I'm going to throw myself a parade. But yeah, I'm going a little bit longer also. Last year was the year of the favorites, all the way from who won pro football, all the way to college basketball, all the way down. Scottie Scheffler wins the Masters. Everybody was favorite. So we're looking a little longer this year. Dallas, who I'm sure I will regret doing this because they do the same thing every year, which is show up in the playoffs and then lay an egg. But they have all the pieces if they could not throw the ball the other team 5 or 6 times. Playing Buffalo, that has dropped back in the eyes of the public. You're getting 18-1 with Buffalo. So give me Buffalo to beat Dallas in one of those that, if I'm right, we're going to be really excited about it. If not, and Kansas City and San Fran are there, we're like, all right, well, everybody knew that.
Be just as disappointing as your wife typically is in you, buddy.
You're not lying.
Hey, we're going to be back in 2 weeks to kick off the pro football season, so check your local listings for times. We'll see you guys then.